Liquor Talk, another podcast where we stir the culture while sipping on some liquor. Starts right now. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Liquor Talk podcast. Thank you for tuning in wherever you tuning in at, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts at. And thank you to Podmatch for bringing us our guest today. Podcast joining us from the West Coast today. We got Dr. Carrie Green in the house today, a licensed sex therapist, y'all. We're going there, so you might want to hide your kids, hide the little ones, because we're going there for this episode. Carrie, thank you for joining me, holding it down in San Diego, and you already know I'm here in Florida, so it's a late night for me, but hey, it's well worth it. Carrie, welcome to Look and Talking. How you doing today?
Thank you. Great to be here. One correction, not a doctor. You're welcome to call me one. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I did not go for the PhD, can't write prescriptions, but I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. My bad on the omission.
No worries. No
It's
worries.
all good. It's all good. So tell us, what does actually a sex therapist do?
I'm going to start with actually covering what sex therapists don't do. And then I'm happy to tell you what we do. Because some people believe that sex therapists maybe have sex with their clients. We don't do that. That they watch their clients have sex and give suggestions and feedback. We don't do that. At least I don't do that. I am a licensed clinical therapist. So I've been in practice for over 20 years. I am a talk therapist. So, as a clinical sex therapist, I have adults only, single adults, single meaning clients. They may be in a relationship, but I meet with individual clients and I meet with couples to talk about anything and everything that falls under the sex therapy umbrella. So, that can be mismatched desire, that can be sexual dysfunction, that can be wanting to try something new in the bedroom, that could be infidelity, that could be opening up their relationship. Lots of different things when it comes to intimacy and desire.
Okay, and so what is the wildest misconception that someone has brought to you?
Gosh, wildest misconception meaning something they believed about sex that isn't true, or what do you mean by that?
Something about meaning sex, something that they thought sex meant, and that's actually not true.
So I've heard a lot of people, I don't want to call it uneducated, but I am going to call it that. A lot of people do not believe that you can get a sexually transmitted infection through oral sex, which you can. The only thing you can't get through oral sex is pregnancy. So a lot of people who are careful about wearing protection during intercourse aren't using protection for oral sex. Most people don't use protection for oral sex, and they don't think about the fact that you can still give and receive an STI through oral sex. It doesn't just happen through penetration. So that's the first one that came to mind.
Okay, yeah, that is definitely a misconception that people need to get right. That hey, anything you do sexually, you can. There is a risk for disease. So going back to you, the person, how did
Yes.
you become a sex therapist, and what inspired this path for you?
So I have been a licensed marriage and family therapist for over 20 years, and I've worked with kids, adults, families, teenagers. I've loved the work the most that I've done with adults and couples around their relationships, their intimate relationships, their sexual relationships. And so, because of that, I really chose about 5 years ago to spend the rest of my career specifically working with adults only around sex and intimacy. I've used to work with, like I said, children. I used to work with adults around stress, grief, anxiety. But I believe that sex is something that is everyone's right. Pleasure is everyone's right. And so many people are not comfortable talking about sex out loud, even to themselves, let alone with their partners that they're engaging in sex with. And so I wanted, as a therapist with a lot of experience over the years talking to clients, to be able to be someone that they could feel comfortable talking to specifically about their sexuality, their kinks, their fantasies, their trauma. And if they're comfortable, hopefully talking to me, they're then going to learn the skills to also be comfortable talking to their partners.
Okay. So why do you feel like people aren't comfortable talking to their partners about sex? Because yeah, everybody, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you're going to talk about everything. So why is it that sex is always something that people are scared to talk about?
It would be nice if people were in relationships that they could talk about anything and everything. I wish all couples could be in relationships that they felt comfortable talking about anything and everything. Yet, sex is one of those topics that is hard to talk about. It's very sensitive, it's very vulnerable. We aren't raised, regardless whether we're growing up on the West Coast, the East Coast, we're not growing up most likely in communities where sex is openly talked about and it's a comfortable topic. So even though we become adults and we go on our own sexual journey, and we may have a partner who we feel so comfortable talking about a lot of other things with, sex is not something that a lot of people are comfortable talking about because it's incredibly, again, I'm going to use the word vulnerable. If we say something that our partner may not understand, may not agree with, may not want to do, we can be judged for it. We can be shamed for it. And a lot of people aren't willing to be open and take that risk. So I try and work with clients around normalizing sex, normalizing kinks, normalizing, what certain people are into, and it's okay if they're not. We all deserve to live our lives the way that we want to, and hopefully have partners that understand that and support that.
Yes, we should. We should be able to live our lives and have partners that support that. And also, to the people who don't communicate, would you rather communicate your issues or have a partner go out and cheat on you? Because, come on now, I'd
Well,
rather,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I always say if two people, or more than two, depending on how many are in your relationship, but assuming it's two people, if two people are honest, have good communication skills, are willing to at least be open minded enough to hear what the other person has to say, doesn't mean they have to agree with it, then most conversations, especially those around the topic of sex, should be able to happen between two adults. Yet, I work with couples who have been married for 20, 25 plus years, and they are sharing information to their partner for the first time with me in the session. They've never said certain things to
Wow.
their partner for 20 plus years, and I'm learning about it at the same time as their husband or wife is. And I'm grateful for it that they're finally saying something, but it's also sad at the same time that they didn't feel for 20 plus years they could share that information, whatever that was.
Right. What are those people doing? Like, why would you be with somebody for like 20 plus years and you can't open things up? Then that's crazy.
I think people are, again, afraid. I talk about this every day in one form or another. People are afraid to talk about the things that are hard to talk about. People are afraid to talk about the things that are uncomfortable to talk about. We don't want to hurt someone's feelings. We certainly don't want to risk that they don't want to be with us or that they might judge us. So instead of taking the chance of, hey, I want to try this, I want to go to the sex shop and buy that, I have tried this before with another partner, is it something you're willing to consider? Instead of even considering that conversation, a lot of people just keep it to themselves. Now, this isn't all people. There are plenty of couples out there who have great communication around sex. They're not necessarily coming to see me. Or they have great communication around sex, but they're not aligned. So they're able to have the conversations, but the conversations aren't about the same thing. So then they're seeking a sex therapist to help them kind of navigate, I want this, they don't. We want to stay together. What do we do with that?
Mm. And in most of those cases, what's usually the solution? Who's the one that has to end up compromising and giving in?
Typically, as far as compromising goes, it is the person with the higher sex drive. Because if one person wants sex more often, or one person wants to be a little bit more adventurous than the other, they're compromising in the sense of they're putting some of their things maybe a little bit on the back burner to allow the one who is less comfortable to get closer to where they're at. If one person is here and one person is here, we may never get here. That just may not happen. If one person is here and one person is here and they're both willing to move just a little bit, this might work. For other couples, it won't. So it really begins starting out with, what is it you want? What is it you need? What are you willing to accept in your partner and in your sexual relationship? What are you maybe not willing to accept? And what does that mean? Some things in sex we can't compromise on. It's like wanting to have a baby. One person can't want to have a baby and the other one doesn't. You can't have half a baby. If one person wants to open the relationship and the other one does not, there's not necessarily a compromise there. So there's ways to, liven up your monogamous relationship. But if one is, I'm only going to want to stay in this relationship if I can go be with other people, that's the only way I'm going to get all my needs met, and the other person says, absolutely not, what do you do with that? And so part of being a therapist, sex therapist or not, is working through some conversations, some hard conversations with couples that they may have to recognize their relationship may not be able to be sustainable depending on what it is. And sex is a big piece of a relationship for a lot of people, especially if you're going to sex therapy.
Yes, sex is definitely a big part of, and sex can make or break your relationships, people. So you definitely need to be communicating these things. So going back to you, the person, Carrie,
Yes.
at what point did you know that this field was the right field for you?
I always, again, was intrigued and interested in learning about people's sexual journeys, their interests sexually, what role sex plays in their relationships, what relationship they have within their own body and their own sexual identity. And so I've always talked about sex and intimacy as a therapist for 25 years. It really was in the last 5 years when I decided to start my private practice that I wanted to fully focus only on sex therapy. I really felt like if I could help even one person, one couple feel more comfortable with their bodies, with their sexuality, normalize how they're feeling. I have yet to have one client come to me and say something that shocks me that I've never heard before. If I can help them feel more comfortable with themselves and their partner, then I've done my job.
Amazing, amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. So go ahead and pour up some drinks if you haven't done so already. This is the birthday bonus episode, y'all. Celebrating my birthday, kicking off my birthday week with this episode, y'all. This is your bonus birthday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessed to see 35. I'm gonna sound like a baby here to some, but hey, I'm blessed to see 35 years on earth. So, and thank you to the people that's been supporting Liquor Talk from episode 1 to episode 350, y'all. I want to thank y'all as well. So this is your birthday bonus episode. This is my birthday gift to y'all. So, because normally I only drop one episode a week, but this week you get 2 episodes because it's my birthday. So that's my birthday gift to y'all. All right, let's get back to yes. Cheers. Cheers to the birthday. Yes, cheers to the birthday. All right, Miss Carrie. For anyone who is nervous to talk to a sex therapist, what does the first session with a sex therapist look like?
So the only difference between a session with one client versus a session with a couple is the amount of people in the room. I will always, always, always start with where the client is at. And I want that client to feel comfortable. So some will jump right in and share with me very specific details of what's going on. Others won't even say the word penis or vagina out loud. They're even scared to do that. So I've got to work with what I have, and I have a pretty good sense of that even within the beginning of a session. And again, it's really normalizing what they're sharing. It's validating how they feel. It's supporting what they're saying. It's helping their partner understand that even if they don't have those same feelings, we want to respect what your partner is saying. And the goal in the end is for the client, the couple, to have a better sex life, have a better relationship with their own body, feel more comfortable talking to their partner. So it's really starting with where the client's at. And I always say slow and steady wins the race. A lot of people try and do too much too soon with whatever their lives are and their goals are. And most likely a week or two into it, it backfires. And our sex journey is lifelong. And we should want to be on that journey as long as we want to be on that journey. And so it's figuring out, what has that looked like? What is stopping us? What times in our lives have we felt the most confident, the most sexual? If we're not feeling sexual in our lives, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Normalizing that for some people who just may not have desire. And again, just having open, honest conversations.
Of course, of course. Staying with the first timers, so people who ain't never been to sex therapy, what is one thing you wish first timers knew before they attended a session with a sex therapist?
Gosh, that's a good question. I wish they just knew that I am human, just like they are, and anything that they feel, believe, have done, want to do, are questioning is all normal. I read all these books, I listen to all these podcasts, I speak to all these other people in the field, and all the clients say the same thing. Whatever their question is, whatever their statement is, and then the last three words after that is, am I normal? And
Mm,
9.9 times out of 10, yes, you are. But we feel alone in our thoughts and our feelings and our sexuality a lot of the times because, again, it's not talked about. We're not necessarily going out to brunch and having very open dialogues about our sex lives. I would love to go to brunch and have conversations with my friends about their sex lives. They may not want to do so. So again, it's having them feel comfortable knowing that what they're feeling, experiencing, wanting, desiring is normal.
of course, of course. It's all normal. Shifting over to couples, what are the most common intimacy issues that you see in couples today?
The number one reason couples go to sex therapy is mismatched desire. And what that basically means is one would define their desire of sex differently than the other. And it's far apart enough that they're needing some, guidance in that. Whether it is the quantity of sex, one person wants to have sex 3 times a week and one person wants to have sex once a month. There's a difference. We've got to figure out, what do we do with that? It may be that they're both on the same page about the quantity, how often they're having sex, but what is going on during the sex is not what both of them want. So there's a difference. There's a mismatch where I want to hear just as much from partner one as I do from partner two. And then again, like any kind of therapy, what can we do with that? Is there room to compromise? Are you willing to move a little bit closer, to where this person is?
Of course, but that is crazy that you hear some couples that the quantity of sex can be so extreme. Like one person wants to have it 3 times a week, and this other person wants to have it once a month. I'm like, God damn, what's wrong with
Well,
that person?
that's not even a huge discrepancy. I would say that there's many couples where, if it could be an option, one partner, more the male than the female, not stereotyping, but typically would have some version of sex every day, and the partner could go months without it.
Damn. Well, then I guess that kind of debunks a common theme I've heard from people over the years, which they say that some women may want sex more than men. So that might not be necessarily the
That
case.
is possible. That is possible. The numbers are closer than people think. In my experience as a sex therapist, maybe another sex therapist would have the total opposite experience. In my experience, the male in a male female heterosexual relationship is most likely, more typically, the higher desire person than the wife,
Mhm.
than the girlfriend, than the female partner.
Of course, of course. Now, are these issues different for long-term couples or long-term relationships, or do you see these issues happening in newer relationships?
I think it's definitely more common the longer you are in a monogamous relationship for sex to decline. Um, we get older, we have children, our lives are more, overwhelming, more stressful. So, intimacy, sex specifically, is sometimes, unfortunately, one of the first things to go. And as we know, once we stop doing something, it's very hard to get it, back. So, with that being said, I have worked with couples. I would say 50% of my couples are not married. They're dating and they are in therapy, which some people may look at that and be like, you're dating and in therapy, maybe you shouldn't be together. I look at it as that's amazing. You're in therapy trying to figure these things out now. So hopefully when you are 15, 20 years married, you've talked about it and worked through it. So there can be sexual issues among any couple, no matter how long they've been together, but you're going to most likely see more issues the longer couples have been together, because that means it's longer that they've gone without talking about it.
Now, staying with the couples that haven't been like that's been together, but they're going through a bit of dry spell, or they haven't been able to talk about it. What's one way for couples to rebuild the intimacy after a dry spell or emotional distance?
I talk so much, kind of back to the idea of slow and steady wins the race. I talk so much about small effort gestures go such a long way. So, one of the best quotes I've ever heard, said by Dr. Emily Morse, sexwithemily.com, love her, is foreplay begins the minute you wake up. And what she
Hmm?
means by that is from the moment your day begins, whether you're waking up with your beautiful partner next to you in bed or not, there is no reason why those gestures can't start. So, good morning, send a text. May I get you a cup of coffee? I hope you have a good day. Like all the little things we can do throughout the day to show our partner we care about them, we love them, we're still attracted to them, we appreciate them. None of those are going to guarantee sex at the end of the day, but they don't hurt. And so, for a lot of couples who have taken the relationship for granted and they haven't shown appreciation to their partner, they haven't touched their partner, you've got to start somewhere. I have some couples where I recommend just having one kiss before the person leaves to go to work that day, one text that says, I'm thinking of you, can't wait to see you later. And even that for some couples is a big ask. So again, you've got to start with where the couple is at and what they're willing to do and go from there.
Wow. It sounds like if those small gestures are a big X, then you gotta question yourself. Why are you still with this person? Like that's how I
Well,
hear it.
a lot of people become complacent, and a lot of long-term relationships, it's not that they don't love their partner, it's not that they don't necessarily want to be with their partner, but other things become a priority. The children become a priority, the career becomes a priority, cleaning the house becomes a priority. Going and grabbing a drink at happy hour with a girlfriend becomes a priority over going on a date night with, your partner. Other things take over. And I always say we always have an option to do something else. We've got to want to prioritize the thing in front of us. We have to want to prioritize sex if we want to have sex. It doesn't just fall out of the sky and happen to us. So, a lot of couples in the beginning of relationships prioritize intimacy. They tell the person they look good. They take them out on dates. They say the nice things. They dress up. They flirt. They do all those things. And then as time goes on, for some couples, those things go away. It's the couples that keep those things going and make the time and the effort and prioritize the sexual component of the relationship. There are plenty of couples out there who have been together 10, 15, 20 years and have amazing sex lives because they've made it a priority. They've put the effort in.
Yes, that those are goals right there. You should always want to put the effort in. Now, staying with couples, how crucial is communication for sexual compatibility?
Absolutely critical. Period. End of story. Communication is important in any relationship, but especially in a sexual relationship, you need to have even better communication because, again, it is such a vulnerable topic. We may not be as specific in our words because certain words we may not feel comfortable using, or one person may define a certain word and another person would define it very differently. So it is very important to have very good communication in the sexual component of the relationship. And so, therefore, how your communication is in other aspects of your relationship is going to carry over into how your sexual communication is.
Of course, of course. Now, what is a communication exercise that you can share for our listeners out there? What's a communication exercise that you can share for the people out there?
So I am very much a advocate of simple, direct communication. I would so here's an example. Tonight, when we go to the bedroom, I would really love it if you could blank. I am really in the mood for this. I am not sure if tonight I want that. Being very, very, very specific and asking for what you want, stating what your need is, not saying yes to something because if we say no, it might upset our partner. We are going to disappoint our partners. That is life. We are going to disappoint our friends. We're going to disappoint our children. We're going to be disappointed. But that doesn't mean we should say yes and go for it just because. So the timing of the conversation is important. The environment of the conversation is important. Knowing that the person is not on their way out the door or they're in the middle of a million other things. To have a conversation around sex, there needs to be the intention to talk about it and set basically an expectation. This is what I would like to see happen. Is that something you are wanting to explore? And the person's either going to say yes or they're going to say no. And then you have a conversation based on what their response is.
That's real. Now, you may have just answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Go for it.
So how do you think partners can introduce new desires or fantasies without fear or shame?
So I'm repeating myself, but that's okay. Start small. If someone wants to introduce a toy into the bedroom, they have never used a toy together. Maybe they have with past relationships, but they've never talked about it, so they don't know. Start small. Maybe, I suggest to couples when you're sitting on the couch tonight watching TV, open up your phone, open up your iPad, go to Adam and Eve, go to this website, go to that website, and just look. It's no different than people scrolling right now for Christmas toys. Look at sex toys. Just look. Familiarize yourself with what they look like. You may not understand, like, how does that thing go into what hole? Like, we may not know. So have fun with it, be playful, start small, and then ask, what would you think if we bought that? Would that be something that would turn you on? If I came out wearing that, what would you think? Is that something you would be willing to let me put inside of you? Like, be very specific, but have an open and honest conversation. And even be vulnerable. It's a little embarrassing for me to say this, but I want to be able to share it with you. I hope even if it's not something you're willing to try, you're going to appreciate the fact that I was being honest. Yeah, of course, honey, what is it? And then you share it. And hopefully your partner is what you were hoping they would be. They're respectful. They're appreciative that you took the time to say it. May not be something they're into and want to do, but you don't regret at least putting yourself out there.
Of course. Now, is there a wrong way to present this to somebody?
I think I try not to say there's a wrong way. There's a less successful way. There's a less productive way. We don't want to put pressure on someone else, so we wouldn't want to say, I'm buying this toy and you better, be okay with me sticking it in blah, blah, blah. That's not a way to go about it. You've got to get consent. You've got to get support. You've got to get an understanding from them that it's something they're okay with. Sex is not something that can be forced. Now, we could have a whole separate, podcast night about BDSM and pain and pleasure and where there is a dom and a sub and control and submissive, but that's not what we're talking about in the sense of both people need to be on board with what is being discussed and what is being brought into the bedroom, whether that is words, that is toys, that is other people. Both people need to be on the same page about it.
Yes, both people need to be on the same page about that. And for all you BDSM special people out there, y'all want to have a conversation, come on down and bring your ass here. Let's talk about it because that is a whole different that is a whole different world in itself. And you know, those people go to those parties, and it's a whole different world than people who just have sex on the regular. But that's a whole different world. Now
But this
shifting
is
over,
it. This is the thing.
but
I wish more people were open to even exploring the possibility of things like that. I think 50 Shades of Grey, we could argue whether that was the best way to look at BDSM or not, but even 50 Shades of Grey allowed so many more vanilla people to be willing to buy sex toys, to play around a little bit with a Dom sub type of, role play. And I wish more people would go to dungeons, would go to play parties, would watch porn together, would dress up, would, role play. It's really funny. We are encouraged as children to play, to dress up, to make believe, to get dirty. Why don't we do that as adults? And why
yeah, we
can't sex be where we do that? We can dress up, we can get dirty, we can role play, we can pretend. Like, we stop doing that as adults. We take life so seriously, and take life seriously. I get it. But allow yourself to be playful and have fun and almost maybe be a different version of yourself during sex if that's what you're into and want to pretend being someone else. Why not? That still makes you a good mother. That still makes you a great teacher. That still makes you, an upstanding person in the community. So many people associate things that are bad about sex. I can't be the PTA president and have gone to a sex party the night before. You can. You might want to be careful who's at the party if they're, also people who go to your kid's school. But my point is, why can't you do both?
You're right. Why can't you do both? Now, I will say people need to get consent and also sign them goddamn NDAs and don't be talking about the shit on social media. If you're gonna talk about it, talk about from your experience. Don't be trying to out somebody.
Of
Only talk about
course.
your
Of
experience.
course. Of course. Yeah. And I don't know if our conversation's going into this, realm now, but a lot of people in the lifestyle, in the open community who are not in monogamous relationships, whatever that means, BDSM, piece of that or not, are human beings just like all of us. They look at sex maybe differently than the mainstream person, but why should they not be allowed to play and explore how they want to? And no one should be outed in that community because we all are kinky in different ways. We just may not be going to a party on a Saturday night to show what we're into.
Of
So, yes,
course.
consent and respect, number one.
Of course, of course. Mainly those two things. Consent and respect, and you'll be all right. Now, shifting over to the mental side, how much of someone's sex life is mental versus physical?
I believe a lot of our openness, our comfort, our ability to receive pleasure and be in the moment in sex is mental. We have
Mm.
our bodies, and our bodies are going to allow us and maybe not allow us to do certain things. Men have it a lot more difficult than women as far as what they need to be able to do to perform during a sexual act, as far as blood flow, keeping an erection, all the things. Yet both men and women could struggle and do struggle with a lot of things physically within their body if they are not comfortable in the moment. Now, don't get me wrong, there are absolute real physical sexual dysfunction disorders. There is absolute real sexual pain disorders. They do exist. It's not just in someone's head. Separate from those things, which we're not talking about, a lot of sex, a lot of ability to have an orgasm, especially for women, ability to stay hard, especially obviously for men, is mental. And that is what I talk to a lot of clients about as well.
So, what's one way that people can get over those emotional blocks that can get in the way of good sex?
I think it begins with, where is that coming from? Was there a negative sexual experience in their past and they haven't worked through that? Are they not comfortable with their own bodies? I know people who will not look at themselves in the mirror, I know people who want to get in and out of a shower as quickly as they can because they know that they're naked and they don't want to be within their naked body. They want to cover it up as quickly as they can. I'm going to start differently with those couples and clients than I am somebody else. So it's got to start with our wanting to be comfortable with our own bodies, whether that's sexually or not. So then when we are sharing an experience with another person, we want to be there both in body and in mind. And a lot of people don't. They close themselves off.
Man, y'all people need to open yourselves up. That's the only way you're gonna make some shit happen. Now, is there a block you would say almost everyone has but don't know it?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Is there like a emotional block that everyone you've encountered have and don't really know it, and they
I
just
mean,
ignoring it?
I guess we could argue that we all have emotional blocks in different ways. I don't know if I would sit here and say we all have sexual emotional blocks that we're just not willing to knock down. I think we all have some level of sexual discomfort, things that we're not sure about, but some are much more willing and open to talking about it than someone else. I always say in a sexual relationship, again, assuming it's with two people, there's three relationships. There's the relationship one person has with themselves, there's the relationship the other person has with themselves, and there's the relationship that they share together. If both individuals are very comfortable with their bodies, they have no problem being naked, they enjoy being naked, they masturbate, they talk very openly about sex, that's going to add to a much more pleasurable, enjoyable sexual experience between two people. Now, does that mean both people have to have those relationships with themselves to have a good sex life with each other? Absolutely not. Yet, if one person is very closed off from their bodies and being able to express their needs, it's going to affect the partner dynamic. How could it not?
Yes. Now, staying with the partner dynamic. Now, how does trauma show up for people in the bedroom, and what healing steps can people take to get past those traumas?
I mean, trauma can show up in so many different ways. It doesn't need to only show up in the bedroom. It could show up if a person is standing at the kitchen sink washing dishes and their partner comes up behind them and grabs them and puts their arms around them in a loving way. That could be enough for them to drop a plate, break it all over the place, and had just been triggered by a response from a past, relationship. So trauma shows up in lots of different ways. I very much encourage someone who has been through a sexual traumatic experience, first and foremost, to know they're not alone, to go get that help and support, whether it was recent or it was decades ago. I have a lot of adults come to me for sex therapy, trauma therapy, for things that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago that they never allowed themselves to work through. And they're now really not deciding, that's not the right word. They're really now realizing I need to come to terms with this. It's affecting my current relationship with my partner. My current partner has never done anything to make me feel unsafe, yet I'm not allowing them to touch me. I'm not allowing them to, ask me things because I haven't worked through my own, trauma. So if the person is able to seek help, if the person is comfortable letting their partner know, and most likely for someone who's experienced trauma, there's going to need to be even more communication. Is it okay if I kiss you here? Is it okay if I touch you there? There might need to be more of those conversations than just kind of being in the moment and going for it, because we don't know what certain gestures are going to bring about a traumatic response.
Of course, of course. If you've been through it, seek help, please, because you never know. There's been plenty of people that overcame things. So, y'all, if you listen to this, please seek the help before it shows up in a negative way. Now, what are some signs that someone has an unhealthy or undeveloped relationship with their sexuality?
Mm. I think there's a difference between the word unhealthy and undeveloped. So, unhealthy would lead me to believe someone is maybe using their body in a way that they don't respect their body, or they are making decisions that they regret. They may be watching pornography in ways that they would, define as unhealthy. So there's going to be a way to go about those conversations differently. Again, everything needs to be defined. I need to make sure I'm understanding what the client is meaning by the words they're using. Undeveloped, I would also want to know what that looks like. I have a client right now who is in her early 30s and is a virgin, has never had sex.
Wow.
And she's an attractive woman, she's a professional, she's very social. It is just not something yet in her life she is comfortable doing. Does that mean she's undeveloped? Does that mean she is unhealthy? No, not necessarily. It's just where she's at. I worked with a couple, I couldn't believe it. I worked with a married couple. They had been married for 4 years and had never had sex, ever.
What?
With each other, let alone anyone else.
That is crazy. How the hell you go 4 years married to somebody and not have sex? How does that even happen?
I mean, there were various layers to it, but it happened.
Was this an arranged marriage?
It was not an arranged marriage. Culture played a role, yet it was something that they both wanted in their marriage. They just had no skills, no tools, no communication to even know how to go about talking about it. And so I was so grateful that they reached out and wanted to learn the language. Sex is a language. If one person says, I really want to make you feel good tonight, that could mean one of 100 things. So if the partner just says, oh yeah, that's great, they may not know what the partner meant by that, versus, I'd love for you to make me feel good tonight. What do you mean? What are you going to do to me? And if like, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and the partner's like, well, that's not what I want you to do. Not to say it that way. They could say it in a kinder way, but I would like you to do these things. Then they have a conversation around it. But it's a language. I spend so much of my day in various sessions with couples, helping them define what they mean by those words. Because if we are not on the same page with communication, especially around sex, that's going to make everything so much more difficult than it needs to be.
Of course, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. If you still here, go ahead and take another shot for your boy, because the more you drink, the better we sound. All right, dealing with the single people. How can single people explore sexuality in healthy and confident ways?
Whatever works for them. I think they need to first, again, define what that means. I've given a lot of clients the homework assignment of looking at their sexual timeline. What does that look like? What were your early experiences with sex? How was it talked about in your home? What were your personal experiences with sex? When did that happen? Was it, something you saw? Was it something you experienced? And what type of sexual relationship do you want? What type of sexual relationship do you want with yourself? And what type of sexual relationship do you want with a partner? It's so much better when we know what we want, what we need, what we don't want, what we don't need, so then we can express those things to future partners.
Of course, of course. So, what is your take on solo exploration and self-awareness? Is it something that's
Huge.
very necessary?
I mean, I don't know if I want to say the word necessary, because I don't want to say that those people who choose to not explore their bodies, masturbate, read erotica, watch porn, try toys, are bad or worse off. I'm not going to sit here and say that. Someone can be incredibly comfortable with their bodies and be very vocal and explorative in their relationships and not do much with themselves. There could be someone who is overly explorative and comfortable with their body, and they don't allow themselves to share their bodies with their partners, because they've been so used to sharing it among themselves. You hear that a lot with women who, get used to vibrators. And so by the time they're with a partner, they're not able to have an orgasm by another human being because they've been so used to getting off by a toy. So I am very big on people wanting to explore their bodies, wanting to explore their sexuality if they want to. That's what it's always going to come down to for me.
I understand if they want to. Now, how much exploration is overly just too much? Like, how much masturbation is too much masturbation?
I mean, you know, there's different schools of thought on sex addiction, porn addiction. We're not going to get into that tonight, but anything can be too much. Someone could exercise too much, drink too much water, golf too much. So I think if the act of anything sexual begins to affect our relationships, begins to affect our day to day abilities, we might need to take a look at that,
Uh,
regardless whether that's masturbation, that's reading about sex, that's having sex, that's spending money on sex, whatever it is. If it's getting to a place that it is not working, it is taking over our lives, and we don't feel good about it, we need to be able to admit to that and have a conversation with someone about it.
Of course, y'all. So have the conversations. Don't go by what social media tell you. Have the conversations with somebody face to face. Have either it's a therapist or someone you're comfortable with. Just have the conversations.
Absolutely. Does not have to be a therapist. I always say, I've gone to school, I have my credentials, I've done my thing, but go and have a cocktail with a girlfriend. Heck, talk to your hairdresser if that's who you're going to share things with. Like, just talk to somebody. Ideally, it would be nice if that person is the person you're having sex with. But if it's not, just practice talking about sex in general. We've got to start somewhere.
Of course, of course. And also, I gotta say, shout out to the people that came through on the podcast and talked about sex. Because I will admit, before I had a podcast, talking about sex was not was something I was not learning to do. But now that I got
Yeah.
this podcast here, now I've had plenty of sexual guests, whether it's
All
porn
bets are off. You can
stars.
talk about whatever you want.
Hell yeah. And that's thanks to having this platform and thanks to having people in that realm come through and bless the podcast with their presence. So what practices can help people feel more sexually confident?
I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be something sexual. Someone could wake up in the morning and go on a hike, and they could reach the top of that mountain and be so proud of themselves, so confident in themselves, feel good in their body. And that could translate to going home and, something happening with themselves or with their partner. It does not have to be something sexual specifically. It's, again, being comfortable with ourselves, exploring our bodies, feeling safe in our bodies, and however we define sexy is sexy,
Of
whatever that
course.
means. I want more people to call themselves sexy.
Yes, you better look in the mirror and call yourself a sexy motherfucker. That's what y'all need to do. Now, shifting to today's times, how has social media, hookup culture, and dating apps changed how people approach sex?
I think you ask 100 different people that question, you're going to get 100 different answers. As both a sex therapist and a single woman dating in her 40s who has had more than enough experience on the apps, I think they're a blessing and a curse at the same time. I've had great experiences with the apps. I think for a full-time working person, single mother, it's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to weed people out of the mix. If people are looking for a casual situation, it's an easy way to do that, just as much as if someone's looking for a long-term relationship. I think it's a great way to meet people. I also think because it is so easy by the swipe of your finger to have someone reaching out to you and meeting you 20 minutes later, if that could possibly work, it's very easy to always wonder when the next best thing is going to happen. And so for people who are looking for more of a serious relationship, they need to be willing to speak to the person in front of them, give the person in front of them a chance, and not be overwhelmed with all of the different apps that are out there. I mean, anytime I go on social media, there is this, you know, dating event or this speed dating thing or this, matchmaker business. Like it might just be my feed, but it's everywhere. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I understand where it can be an overwhelming thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. I guess now it's not the time to tell you that I recorded with a matchmaker recently,
Oh,
and that
okay.
was a very interesting conversation. So y'all stay tuned for that conversation.
Yeah,
I
I'd love to hear
recently
that too.
I recently talked to a matchmaker. It was a very very interesting conversation. Sex didn't come up, but but hey, that's why we're
How
here today.
but listen, how interesting is that? Someone not judging this person, don't know who they are. Their job is to match people with other like-minded people to be in a relationship, right? I mean, that's what a matchmaker is. I don't think I'm defining it incorrectly.
No, you're right. You're right.
Maybe it just didn't come up in the conversation with you, but boy, would I hope when he or she is matching people and being paid a lot of money to do so, I would hope sex is one of the top three, if not top five, categories that he or she is talking about with potential people. Because how could it not be?
Right. How could it not be? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get on the matchmaker about that. So with social media and everything in the hookup culture, do you feel like it's hurting or helping or hurting intimacy?
Um, I don't know if I would say either. I might kind of play the middle ground at this point. It could absolutely hurt in the fact that people infidelity can happen a lot more often now with hookup culture, with social media, with apps readily available at your fingertips. Um, but at the end of the day, I'm a believer, maybe I'm not the norm. If someone wants commitment, if someone wants monogamy, if someone wants what they are looking for, they're going to keep their eye on the prize regardless of all the distractions and all the different things that are going on. And they're going to focus on their path and what they want. Just as much as if someone's looking for casual, fun hookup culture, plenty of ways for you to do that and have fun with it.
Uh,
We're grown adults. Do what you want to do. I always say again, consent and respect, but let the person know what you're looking for. That I think
mm-hmm.
is one of the biggest things in the dating world, whether you're in your 20s or you're in your 50s. A lot of people aren't honest from the beginning. They say they're looking for something that they're really not, just to get the person to give them what they want. And this goes for both genders. And then people's feelings are getting hurt because those people are not having communication. They're not talking about it.
Of course, they're not talking about it. They need to lay it all out there instead of wasting
Yep.
people's time. And I think
Yes.
a whole lot of people would be better if people just lay it on out there and stop wasting time. Now,
Yeah.
going to the bedroom. What do people get wrong about foreplay, and what should foreplay actually include?
A lot of men, sorry guys, sorry, not sorry, a lot of men are excited that sex is even happening. They're like, oh my gosh, I even had a client say it to me today. I don't know when it's going to happen again. So I've got to like get excited about it. And I want to go right to penetrative intercourse because I don't know how long this is going to last. And so a lot of men skip through foreplay. And a lot of women, again, this isn't all, a lot of women want the foreplay. Back to the thing I said at the beginning of the podcast, foreplay begins the minute you wake up. Foreplay isn't just the kissing, the touching, the undressing, the oral, the this, the that. Of course, it's all of those things. But why does it need to start before the sexual act itself of intercourse, which is typically what most people refer to as sex? Why can't that foreplay begin earlier in the day? And that's through words, that's through actions. So, where foreplay goes wrong is when it is completely skipped over and one partner, typically the woman, but sometimes the man, needs and wants that build up to the main event of intercourse. And some women need that build up. A lot of
Oh,
women aren't able to orgasm, be into the moment if it's from 0 to 100. They need the slow progression.
you know what? You're right about that. As a man, I have to sit here and agree because I've experienced both. I've experienced the Russian quickie, and it's like it benefited none of us because I don't think I got off, and I don't think she got off. But to
Well,
compare
don't get me
to
wrong. Don't get me wrong. Sorry to interrupt, but let's say we have 10 minutes before Your parents drop the kids off. We have 5 minutes before I've got to hop onto my next Zoom call. Go for it. Make it quick. Go straight to the source. Do what you want to do because it's what you both want. And there are some exciting things about that. Sometimes sex happens. A lot of times sex happens, but people don't talk about it. And there is no orgasm. And that's not just for the woman. Some men have sex and don't have an orgasm. And
That's true.
it's not an issue. Again, an issue, I always say to my clients, an issue is only an issue when it's an issue with one person. Now, if time after time after time, there's no orgasm, sure, we might want to figure out what's going on. But if two people decide we have 5 minutes, let's go for it, and there is no orgasm, I would hope they can still say, that was fun. I had a great time. I'm so glad we did it. That's the important part, not I didn't get off, you didn't get off. That was a waste of time. I hope that's not what people say.
I would hope not either. I would definitely not hope not. But I will say, you take it slow and steady, she might have multiple orgasms and blowing up your phone the next day. So
It's possible.
hey, that's the goal.
Possible.
Yes, anything is possible. Now, what is a sexual question that people are embarrassed to ask you and that they actually should be asking?
Gosh, I think a lot of men and women, it kind of goes back to just not being educated about it. And again, I'm not saying that someone is stupid. We don't know a lot about the human body. We don't know a lot about, how orgasms happen and what our bodies need to be able to do for an orgasm to happen. So I think a lot of those questions are just better understanding our anatomy. Most women, a penis is out there. You can see it. It's right there. A vulva is not. Most women have no idea what their vaginas look like because it would require them to look. It would require them to spread their legs. It would require them to look in a mirror. Most aren't going to do that unless maybe they have a little itchy situation going on down there and they've got to kind of look to see what's going on. That's not a reason you want to look. You want to look because you want to see what it looks like. And everyone's is different. So we have no problem looking at other parts of our body. Let's own it. Let's become more comfortable and familiar with what the body even looks like. Do men even know where the clitoris is? Do men even know, do women know that men, have incredible nerves around their anus? Like all the things that we don't have to necessarily do anything with, but we should at least know about it.
Of course, we should definitely know about it. So, besides knowing about our own bodies, what is something that you wish more people understood about our bodies?
I wish everybody understood, and I don't think it's that they don't understand. I think that they just may not want to accept it or believe it. We all deserve pleasure, and we are all capable of pleasure. There are very, very, very few legitimate medical disorders out there that will not allow a man to have an orgasm or a woman to have an orgasm. That does exist. I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't. But the majority of men and women, I believe, through therapy, through conversations, through exploration, can have incredible sexual pleasure if they allow themselves to.
Okay, that's real. Now we're about to close real soon. So we'll start with the couples. What is one sexual wellness tip for the couples out there that you hope they take away from this episode?
Communicate, be honest, be vulnerable, risk your partner maybe not understanding what you're wanting, maybe not being in agreement with what you want. That's okay. If you have a strong enough relationship, you're going to be able to work through it. But be willing to even explore the conversation.
Of course. So have those conversations to all my couples out there. Now, to the people that are in the same boat as you and I who are single, what is a sexual wellness tip for the singles?
I would say the same thing, but turn it inward. Communicate with yourself. I'm not saying sit there and talk out loud. If you want to talk out loud, go to town. Have those conversations with yourself. What has my sexual journey been like? Where have I felt the most beautiful and handsome and sexual and in control of my body? Have I ever felt that way? What would it take for me to feel that way? How do I want to present myself in my next relationship? How do I go about doing this thing and not feel shame, an embarrassment around it. Again, communicate even within ourselves, better understand ourselves. So then when we do meet someone we want to share our bodies and sexual identity with, we are more confident and knowledgeable in ourselves to do so.
That's real. That's real. And lastly, why should people hire a sex therapist, whether it's yourself or any sex therapist, no matter where anybody's listening to this episode at? Why do people need to hire a sex therapist?
Absolutely. A sex therapist is someone who will listen, will support, will give guidance, will not yuck your yum, will not, judge you. A sex therapist will give you the platform to speak openly, honestly, and hopefully leave you feeling like, again, you are normal, you are deserving of love, you are deserving of pleasure, and be a guide to help you live the life of sexual desire you've always wanted to.
Of course, you gotta get that help. Carrie, I want to thank you for blessing the Liquor Talk with your presence. How can the people reach you if they want to know more from you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. My website's the best way to get a hold of me. So my name, Carrie Green, lmft.com, talks a lot about different types of sex therapy, ways to get in touch with me. I so appreciate you having me on tonight. Happy early birthday. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. Thank you to our friends at Podmatch for making this happen. And thank you to listeners for listening to subscribing to Liquor Talk. Go ahead, pour up if you haven't done so already. Remember, life is short. Find that pleasure and keep things pushing. We are taking over for the 25 and the 26. This has been Liquor Talk. Until the next episode, peace.